It is the year of celebrating infinite voices of truth. It is the summer of myself. And what came to me as a topic was being a beneficial presence when the worst happens. Now, Reverend Leslie, you might ask me, what does that have to do with the summer of myself? And this is why it comes up for me. When I sit with people who are struggling, when they're talking about what they regret, what they wish they did better in their life and moving forward in their life, is being present for people in their life that are struggling. I don't know what to say. I don't want to make it worse, so I just stay away. Or I show up and just things come out of my mouth and I'm like, I can't believe I said that. This may feel familiar to you if you're human. If you're not, welcome. But for the rest of us, this is a challenging topic, right? And it's something that none of us are going to get out of this life without dealing with, because trauma is happening to everyone every day. So let's look at the definition of trauma. Trauma is a person's experience of emotional distress resulting from an event that overwhelms the capacity to emotionally digest it. So very often people will say, well, it's not like I had real trauma. You know, my parents weren't murdered in front of me. That was Batman. But if it feels like trauma to you, if you feel like you are going through it, then it is trauma. And if we don't process it, then it becomes the trauma we have to go back to later. I think I'm probably the only one still dealing with unprocessed childhood trauma. But just in case this is you, going through how we can show up better can help us be more forgiving of those who didn't in our past as well. Because it's not easy, it's not natural, and it's not taught in kindergarten, though I really wish it were. I really wish it were. So how do we do it? How do we do it? How do we learn to be a beneficial presence, which is the number one reason why people tell me that they come here. They use lots of language for it. They don't use the fancy science of mind language. Very rarely do people say, I wish to be a beneficial presence in the life of those around me. But they say, I want to make the world better. I want to help my family. I want to be at peace when hard things happen. That's being a beneficial presence. So they don't teach it in kindergarten, but a couple of friends years ago were talking. One was a psychologist and one was an elementary school teacher, and they were talking about why don't we have a system for helping people learn how to be a beneficial presence. Their names were Susan Silk and Barry Goodman. And so they made one, and it's brilliant, and it's called the ring theory of trauma, and it looks like this. So when we're looking at this, in the center, the dot in the center, that's the person actually being impacted. If you get a cancer diagnosis, you're the dot in the center. If your spouse passes away or leaves, you're the dot in the center, the person that it's actually happening to. Now, what you might notice is that it's also happening to that person's children or that person's spouse. It's also happening to their extended family and their friends and their colleagues and the people they know from the coffee shop. When trauma hits, it hits everybody, right? And we are all having our feelings about it. And that's part of why being a beneficial presence is so challenging, because our own emotions are up. But when we have a system like this, it helps us figure out appropriate behavior. So the key here is support goes in and dumping, energetic processing goes out of the rings. So step one of using this model is, where are you in the rings? If your best friend's going through a divorce, are you the dot? No, you are not the dot. Are you the first ring, which is literally spouse and children? No. The next ring is closest relatives impacted. Are you mom? No, you're not that ring. The next ring is closest friends, best friends. And in any friend group or family group, you have your own set of rings. You might have a best friend that's in closer than your mom. You might have kids that are on the fourth ring. You got to make your own ring. But we're going with general structure here. Who are you? What ring are you in? That is absolutely key because it tells you where the energy should be going and to whom from your perspective, from your individual perspective. Wherever you sit on your rings, only comfort goes in, and all of your dumping goes out. Which can be a little bit hard when you find yourself on one of those outer rings, right? Because everybody who knows about the situation is probably closer in. That's when you get this amazing thing. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it is brilliant. It is called a practitioner, a minister, or a therapist. They're everywhere. In this very room, there are like 14 of them. Sometimes the best person to help you process is a person who isn't involved in the situation so that you can move the positive energy in. So let's talk about dumping out. Dumping out. When these things are going on, it impacts us. Say your child just called and said they're getting a divorce. And ooh, the list of things going through your head. I taught them better than that. This is not what we do in our family. I said don't marry that jerk. What are we going to have to do to help them? How can I get there? It's going to cost money to fly out there and support. It's going to cost money to do almost everything that's helpful. The thoughts get a churning. They get a churning. And the next thing you know, you're calling up that person and being like, I didn't have the energy to deal with this. What's going on the inside of the person who's actually being personally affected by that trauma? I shouldn't have told them. I can't trust people to support me. This is why I should just keep the mask on, be inauthentic, and pretend like everything's okay. And is this what we want for our beloveds? No, of course not. But it's so easy to get pulled in. So all the dumping goes out. We can say anything we want to people further out on the circle and beyond because it's safe and it's okay. But can we say any of that to people who are further in on the circle? No. Only support goes in. And why does only support go in? Because when you're talking to people closer in on the circle, it's not about you. It's about you when you're talking to the outer circles and beyond. But going in, it's only about them because their trauma is more intense in this moment. Is this genius or what? Where was this picture until I was 40? When I found it, I was like, oh, of course, but it's not intuitive. Once you see it, you'll be like, everybody knows this. But until you saw it, you probably didn't. It makes perfect sense, but we don't think about it that way. This is why it's essential. I had a friend, a fellow minister, not in this community, who was going through a divorce. And she sat on it for a long time. Didn't tell anybody about it. Pretty close friend of mine. And when she did finally address it with her community, because we have to, right? You guys need to know what's going on with us. She spent the first hour after making that announcement talking a congregant off the cliff about how upset she was about this minister's divorce. This is proof to me that love is not real. If even you can't do this right, then it's not doable. Science of mind is a lie, and on, and on, and on. And when I finally heard from this friend, she said, this is why I didn't want to tell him. This is why I didn't want to tell them. We want to believe that we are a safe space for the people in our lives. But in order for that to be true, we have to be a safe space for the people in our lives, which means only support in. Only support in. Take a breath. We're going to take another breath, and then we're going to exhale out forgiveness for every time we didn't do this right. We cannot judge ourselves according to the standards of what we did not know when we made that choice, said that thing, did that thing. But when you know better, what? You do better. When you know better, you do better. So, Reverend Leslie, you may be asking, when we're supporting in, I still don't know what to say. It's still uncomfortable and squidgy. And it is. And it is. You don't want to say the wrong thing. So let's talk about when it goes wrong. It's happened once or twice, right? When it goes wrong. When it goes wrong, usually one of two things are happening. The first one is you just don't know what to say, and so you fall back on cliches. You become a walking Hallmark card. God doesn't give you any more than you can handle. I'm so sorry you had a miscarriage. I'm so grateful you can try again. Ouch. Well, it must be according to God's plan. Right? Ouch, ouch. As much as those are well-meant phrases, they don't feel well-meant in the moment. The other thing that can happen is trying to fix it, which we like to call toxic positivity. It could always be worse. You've got it better than lots of people. Be grateful for what you do have. True and accurate. Not the time. Where's your consciousness that you manifested that? That's how you fix it. There's a little bit of truth in there, and not the time. Those are things that people can only come to in their own time, in their own consciousness, and it's a nuanced thing. You know what isn't nuanced? A hammer over someone's head, which is what that feels like in the moment. But we can all take a breath, and we can all relax, because none of that is our job. It is not our job to be a teacher or to fix anything. It's actually not even our job to say anything. It's our job to show up. That's it. It's our job to show up. We don't have to make them feel better. Probably nothing's going to make them feel better in the heart of real trauma. We don't have to explain it. There's no explanation for a lot of things that happen. We absolutely don't have to fix it. We can't fix it. Our job is to love them right where they are. And that's it. Really take a breath and breathe that in. Our job is to love them. So what can you say? What can you say? You can say, there are no words. I'm just going to be with you. We don't even have to talk. We can just sit together. You can talk to me about your lost loved one anytime you want. I will always listen. Do you feel the difference? For those of us who have had somebody polished enough, well-trained enough, and well-centered enough to behave this way in the heart of one of our traumas, boy, does that stick in the heart. We remember what that felt like forever, to have someone say, there's no wrong way to do this. Grief doesn't have an expiration date. I'm going to love you no matter what. None of that fixes, explains, or changes anything. But that is the heart of being a beneficial presence. A beneficial presence allows someone to feel love when the worst is unfolding. when it feels like there is no good thing left on earth, having that one person say, "You're doing the very best you can, and I am proud of you for that." And that's all. So when we show up, there are really three things we want to keep in mind. Once we know where we are on the ring, and we're supporting inwards, what do? The first one is to love them without judgment. Grief makes crazy people. Grief does wild things to us. They may do and say things that feel very uncharacteristic and very unnatural to you. I always get mad when I'm watching like cop shows on TV, you know, the NCISs of the world, and they say, "She's not acting like a woman in grief." That doesn't mean anything. People in grief act all the ways, completely neutral, wildly upset, angry, break things, sit in silence, rock, cry, don't cry. Whatever they're showing up as, let it roll. Just let it be. They may say mean things. They may lash out. They may withdraw. Let it ride. When one is in grief, part of showing unconditional love is to love them unconditionally. I know that that's a surprise, but the best way to show unconditional love is to love them unconditionally, including in the messy parts, because nothing is messier than trauma. On the inside of yourself, I'm going to repeat that preface. This is an important one. On the inside of yourself, in the silence of the cavern of your own heart and the inner altar, you notice how none of this is mouth-based. On the inside of yourself, know that the best and the highest is coming for them. But under no circumstances say, "My church taught me that this is for your highest and best, so you should be grateful." Right? On the inside of yourself, make sure you're prayed up and meditated up and centered enough that you can do this on the inside of yourself. And on the outside of yourself, just love them. Just love them. The second step is the hardest step. Showing up. It's really easy to do all the things I've already talked about in your prayer room by yourself, not talking to anybody. It's a whole other thing to pick up the phone or drive across town and be with that person in their pain. Pain's uncomfortable. We don't like it as human animals. We don't want to have it, and it's hard to be in the proximity of it, yes? But love is doing the hard thing because we love them. It's part of the unconditionality of it. I will put myself in an uncomfortable situation to love you. So we show up. Please don't disappear on your loved ones when they're struggling. It's easy to do. I'll do it tomorrow. She's probably busy. I don't want to bug her. Please show up. Use your supportive words or just sit in silence. It genuinely doesn't matter what you do when you get there. But be there. Thich Nhat Hanh, the wonderful Buddhist teacher, had this to say: when you love someone, the best thing you can offer is your presence. How can you love if you're not there? Show up, phone calls, text messages, weird little memes. The kids call it pebbling, because penguins, when they like another penguin, will bring them a particularly shiny rock. I know. It's so cute. And so the young ones, if you have a Gen Z or a Gen Alpha or even some millennials in your life, in your circle, they will send you memes, little text you pictures that they think you'll think are funny or cute. It's their version of the same thing. That's your shiny rock. It's saying, I love you. Every time you say, hey, did you see the new season of Bridgerton is out? Look at this picture of otters. Keep showing up. Keep showing up. And the third one is helping out. If you're available to them in person, and sometimes even not, show up and offer practical help. Avoid to the best of your ability falling into the trap of, tell me if you need anything. Do you know what a person in trauma can't do? Think. Trauma just shuts the thinking machine off. Rather than asking, hey, tell me what I can do, look around. What needs doing? Just do it. Don't even say, hey, are you cool if I do the dishes? Just start doing the dishes. The kids need to be picked up, and friend can't put on clothes, go get the kids. There isn't food in the house, pick up your phone, click the Instacart button, and order some groceries. Just make life easier in little, simple, practical ways that make sense to your relationship. Don't worry about if they will be offended by it. By the time they have enough brain left to be offended by it, they won't remember you did it. That's just a truth about trauma. If they actively say they don't want help, let them not want help. Accept it. If they say, hey, the best way to love me is to not touch my kitchen. Okay, perfect. Hey, I could start a caring bridge, or hey, I can organize a meal drive for you. No, I don't want that. Accept that and don't get offended. Why? It's not about you. It's not about you. Loving unconditionally requires unconditionally loving. And if you can, if you have the capacity, give them a break from the weird. Do you have a hobby in common? Do you have a show you like to watch together? Did a movie just come out with their favorite actress? Give them something, 5 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, to think about anything other than what is going on. We all need a breath. We all need a moment. If you have the capacity to give that to them, please do. Here's the big conclusion to a very quiet talk on a very quiet topic. Being a beneficial presence does not require any special skills. It doesn't require a list of rights and wrongs. It only requires the willingness to show up unconditionally and love them where they're at. And everyone within the sound of my voice has the capacity to do that. And so that's our invitation this week. That friend you've been putting off reaching out to, that loved one that you've been meaning to call, reach out this week. Reach out this week. Let them know they are loved. They need to hear it. So it is. And so let us anchor this with some prayer. There is an infinite power, an infinite presence of pure love that is life itself. We call it God, Spirit, the universe. It doesn't matter what we call it. It simply matters that we remember that there is this presence and that it is everywhere and in and through and as all beings. It's my truth. It's the truth of everyone within the sound of our voice. That all life is made of this infinite presence, and love is built into who and what we each are. And so knowing this truth, I speak my word this day, affirming and knowing that the love that is already built into us is being called forth powerfully and beautifully in ways that positively impact the people in our lives. That whatever was on our heart when we came into this space, that Spirit is already working on it. That whatever is happening in the space of the people that we love, that we are part of the answered prayer as we show up in our love, in our support, and our kindness. And as we allow people on circles further out than we are to love and support us. That this is all part of the divine plan, that we take care of each other from the inside out, that we are showing up as the divine in form. So grateful I am for all of the support and loving kindness that is sure to come from this time we have shared together. And I call it all good and beautiful as we let it be, releasing it into the action of universal law. We know this together as we say, and so it is.